Single dad Janitor saved a $180 deal with one foreign phrase, and the CEO froze when she heard it. The last chair scraped across the marble floor. The elevator chimed shut. Silence settled like dust over the Winter Industries boardroom, except for the hum of a forgotten projector casting its final slide, projected launch Seoul. Q2. Below it, a row of executive coffee cups still steamed untouched. Then came the sound of a mop bucket sloshing wheels creaking on polished tile. Liam Walker stepped into the room. No one noticed him earlier. No one ever did. He wore a gray janitor's uniform frayed at the cuffs with his name Liam barely legible on a faded patch. 38. Tired eyes, sharp mind. And tonight something in the air made him pause. He stood there for a second staring at the glow on the screen. The projector flickered. Liam moved toward the table collecting glasses, careful not to smudge fingerprints, an old habit he never really needed but kept anyway. That's when he saw at a folder still open a page sticking out halfway written in a language most of the room couldn't read. Korean. He froze. Not because it was strange to find a foreign clause in a stack of English language briefs. That happened all the time. No, he froze because of what the clause said. He leaned closer, mouthing the words slowly as he translated in his mind, "All indemnification liabilities shall be waived in the absence of dual verified documentation, including but not limited to digital correspondence and bilingual execution records." He read it again, and then again. His jaw clenched. The clause wasn't just a footnote. It was a trap, a beautifully phrased, legally sound trap. If the contract went through with that paragraph intact, Winter Industries would be signing away any protection in case the deal soured. It was the kind of clause you buried in a foreign language appendix hoping no one would notice. Except he did. Liam folded the paper gently, tucked it into his chest pocket. His fingers lingered on the edge of the table. Part of him wanted to pretend he hadn't seen it, that he didn't know, that he could just go back to being invisible. But another part, the part of him that had translated the tale of Simcheong for his daughter last night and read ancient Greek just for fun, refused to look away. He stood there a moment longer, staring at the room where decisions were made, big decisions, risky ones, the kind he used to dream of being a part of before life cracked him wide open. Then he turned and walked out. No fanfare, no music swelling. Just a man with a mop bucket and a page of words no one else had bothered to read. "I swear to God they don't even look at the last pages anymore," muttered a voice at the security desk. Liam handed over his visitor's log badge to the night clerk. "What was the meeting about?" the guard asked casually. Liam shrugged. "I don't think I was invited." The guard chuckled, not catching the weight in his tone. In the elevator, Liam pulled the folded page from his pocket and read it once more, his thumb brushing over a small red dot near the footer, a symbol he recognized. It meant non-binding, but only if translated literally. In corporate legalese, it was a bluff, a way to plant ambiguity. Words mattered. He thought of Sophie asleep by now, her head curled into the side of his old armchair, the TV still on mute, the stuffed bear still clutched in her arms. He thought of the nights she asked about her mom, the mornings she made him promise they'd be okay. And he thought of how easily people with power signed things without reading them. The next morning. Conference room B was empty again. A fresh pot of coffee brewed in the corner. Liam stood outside the door, hesitating. He held a sealed manila envelope in his hands labeled "Only read before signing." Inside was a translated version of the Korean clause annotated with cultural context, legal implications, and one handwritten note. "Sometimes the things you overlook are the things that cost you most. L.W." He slipped it under the door. Meanwhile, 17 floors up, Madison Winter was reviewing the agenda with her assistant. "We sign tomorrow," she said, adjusting the cuff of her blazer. "I want no surprises. There was an extra document left on your desk this morning. No name, but it's flagged in red." Madison frowned. "Red. It's a translation. Korean clause from the merger docs. She raised an eyebrow. That clause was internal. Legal said it was minor. Apparently not. She opened the folder, read the annotation. Her eyes stopped on one line highlighted in pencil, dual verified documentation. Her brow furrowed. Then her gaze dropped to the signature LW. Who the hell is LWU? Her assistant shrugged. They weren't on the meeting list. Madison looked up slowly, realization dawning like thunder in her chest. Then find out where the hell they were. Downstairs, Liam was already back in uniform cleaning smudges off the hallway glass, his reflection distorted and faint. But his words were about to echo louder than anyone expected. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. Liam's boots echoed softly against the concrete floor of the basement level, the only part of Winter Industries that never saw sunlight. Here, pipes hissed and machines whirred like forgotten lungs beneath a corporate body that rarely noticed it was breathing. He pushed open the heavy staff room door with his shoulder. The smell of metal soap and vending machine coffee greeted him like an old acquaintance. Sophie sat at the corner table swinging her legs, a Korean picture book open in front of her and a pencil tucked behind her ear. Her blonde curls were tied up messily, and the sleeves of her second-hand hoodie swallowed her hands. "How'd it go?" she asked without looking up. Liam let out a breath as he sat down across from her. "I left it," he said. "Will they read it?" He hesitated, then smiled gently. "I hope someone does." Sophie looked at him for a long moment the way only children do when they haven't yet learned to doubt everything. "You're smarter than all those people in the shiny shoes, you know. Smarts don't pay rent, kiddo. No, but they stop people from being stupid." Liam laughed, and for a second his face softened. That was what kept him going. Not ambition, not redemption, just this small girl who believed he was still somebody. Later that morning upstairs, the corporate floors buzzed to life. Phones rang, high heels clicked, elevator doors whispered open and closed. But down in B6 maintenance, nothing changed. Liam clocked in, swapped his jacket for the gray overalls, and grabbed his mop. Routine was armor. But today, his mind wasn't cooperating. It kept drifting back to the boardroom, to the line of fine print in Korean, to the subtle shift in tone, the ambiguity woven like silk through legal language. Most people would have missed it. He couldn't unsee it, not after what happened years ago. It had been a decade, but Liam still remembered the email he'd sent to the ethics committee at Yale. A visiting linguistics professor had copied entire paragraphs from a doctoral thesis written in Korean, assuming no one would notice or understand. Liam had noticed, and he'd paid for it with his academic future. Whistleblowers make people uncomfortable, the dean had said. There are more constructive ways to handle disagreements, his advisor added. "You're not tenured," someone else whispered as if it were a death sentence. The message had been clear, truth was inconvenient. So Liam stopped offering it. Until last night. A knock came on the staff room door. It was Andre, a night shift cleaner with a bright smile and a slight limp. "Yo, Liam," he said, holding a crumpled note. "They're asking for you upstairs." Liam frowned. "The reception said your name popped up in the system. Didn't know janitors made the board meeting list now." Andre chuckled and limped off. Liam stood there for a second, his hand tightening on the mop handle. Then he changed into a clean shirt, tucked it in for once, and took the service elevator. When he stepped into the lobby, the receptionist blinked. "Mr. Walker?" "That's me," he replied carefully. She handed him a visitor badge. "They're expecting you on floor 49. As he rode the elevator, the numbers ticked upward like a countdown. He adjusted his collar. He hadn't been this high up since his job interview 3 years ago, where no one had asked about his resume, only whether he could use a floor buffer and work weekends. Ding. The doors opened into glass steel and silence. A young assistant approached. "Follow me, please." She led him into a small conference room. Not the main boardroom, this one was quieter, more private. Madison Winter was already there, flipping through the translated pages. She didn't stand when he entered. She didn't need to. Her presence filled the room. "You're not on any of my teams," she said without looking up. "I'm not on any of your floors, either," Liam answered. She looked at him now. "You're the one who left this." She tapped the annotated clause. Liam nodded. "I wasn't trying to interfere. I just thought it was worth reading." She studied him, expression unreadable. "You knew exactly what this clause meant. That's not something you guess." "No, ma'am." "It's not. You studied linguistics, Yale. Didn't finish." "Why not?" Liam's gaze dropped. "My daughter needed a full-time parent more than the world needed another language expert." Madison leaned back. "So you've been pushing a mop ever since." "There's honor in clean floors," Liam said quietly, "but I never stopped reading between the lines." Something in her expression shifted. Not softening, more like recalibrating. "Do you know how many people read this clause?" Liam shook his head. 13, she said. "Not one of them flagged it. But you did, and you weren't even supposed to be in the room. I'm never in the room." Silence. Then Madison slid the folder closed. "You may have just saved us $180 million. Liam didn't smile. He just nodded. "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just didn't want anyone to get blindsided." "Well," she said, rising, "let me be blunt. You've got my attention, and I don't give that easily." She walked past him, then paused at the door. "Mr. Walker." He turned. "Don't disappear just yet." And with that, she was gone. Back in the basement, Sophie looked up as Liam returned. "Did they read it?" He nodded. "They did. Did they say, 'Thank you'?" He thought for a moment. "Not exactly. But they didn't ignore it." Sophie smiled, then opened her book again. "Bears don't need thank yous," she said. "They just need to be heard." Liam sat beside her. The hum of the machines returned. The pipes exhaled. And for the first time in years, Liam Walker felt like something was shifting. However quietly above the floor, no one ever saw. The clock in Madison Winter's office ticked like a metronome, measured relentless and strangely loud in the morning stillness. Outside her floor-to-ceiling windows, the city pulsed with movement, but her gaze was fixed on one thing, a single sheet of paper from the contract folder now lying face up under a slant of cold light. The translation was meticulous. Annotations in clean block letters lined the margins. Some circled phrases, others offered footnotes with cultural context. There was no signature, just the initials LW. "How many lawyers missed this?" she asked, not turning her head. Her assistant, Jenna, hesitated. "All of them. Legal strategy, even compliance." They said it was standard formatting. Most of it was scanned through AI. And yet, a janitor with no team, no degree, no title. Madison's voice trailed off. She lifted the paper, flipping it over like it might bleed another layer of meaning. Her mind wasn't just turning over the clause. It was turning over him. Who was Liam Walker? Why hadn't anyone noticed him before? And why, despite the polished boardroom, the top-tier legal team, and a 100-page brief, was he the only one who had truly read it? She picked up her phone and hit a number. "Get me legal. I want a meeting. And this time, bring someone who's fluent in Korean. Not just certified fluent." Meanwhile, Liam was back to wiping fingerprints off a chrome elevator panel. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. He hadn't expected her to call him in, much less to actually read what he left. Most of the time, people like Madison Winter didn't look twice at men in overalls. But something had shifted yesterday. The way she paused before leaving the room, the way she said, "Don't disappear just yet." Still, he knew better than to mistake curiosity for conviction. He'd been noticed before, and forgotten just as quickly. That afternoon, Madison walked into Conference Room C where the department heads were gathered. The mood was upbeat, borderline celebratory. PowerPoints glowed on sleek screens. Laptops clicked. A tray of catered pastries sat untouched on the side. "Let's finalize the Seoul rollout," said Evan Haynes, head of global expansion. "The language has been vetted correct except one section," Madison said. Heads turned. I received an anonymous translation yesterday. One none of you caught." The room shifted. With respect, Evan said carefully we had 3 contract attorneys and 2 software passes verify every line. And yet she said, sliding the paper across the table, "This clause implies that if any post-signature dispute arises without dual-verified documentation, we're liable. Period. No recourse, no defense." A pause, then a slow murmur. "Who translated this?" asked one of the attorneys. A janitor, Madison said simply. "Name's Liam Walker." A few exchanged incredulous glances. "You're saying a janitor found something our legal team missed?" "I'm saying," she said, eyes narrowing, "that someone without a seat at this table just saved our company from signing a $180 million liability trap. And I want to know how the hell that happened." Downstairs, Liam was crouched behind a potted plant in the main lobby, replacing a faulty LED strip along the wall. He worked quietly focused as always. Then a shadow fell across him. Liam Walker. He looked up. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit handed him an envelope. "Miss Winter asked me to deliver this personally." Liam took it, brushing dust from his gloves before carefully opening the flap. Inside was a crisp white folder. A single sentence handwritten inside. "You saw what others didn't. I'd like to see what else you see." M.W. Beneath it, a printed invitation. Internal review session. 4 p.m. Conference Room A. Bring your eyes and your mind. At 3:58, Liam stood outside the conference room door. He looked down at his uniform, clean but still unmistakably working class. He considered turning back. Then Sophie's voice echoed in his memory. "Bears don't need thank yous. They just need to be heard." He stepped in. The room was half full, 2 members of Legal One Strategy VP and Madison at the head of the table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Liam didn't speak. Neither did she. She just gestured to the seat beside her. That alone sent murmurs around the room. He sat. "Mr. Walker said one of the lawyers measured and formally reviewed your annotations. They're impressive. Could you walk us through how you reached those conclusions?" Liam looked down at the paper, then back up. "It's not just about the words," he said quietly. "It's about what's not being said." Korean legal documents often use indirect phrasing. What sounds polite may actually be evasive. In this case, the clause doesn't explicitly say Winter assumes fault, but it removes the burden of proof from the other party. He tapped the margin. This phrase, in the absence of dual verified documentation, that's not standard in Korean contracts unless they're setting up grounds for escape. Silence. One of the lawyers whispered, "He's right." Madison looked at him then, not as a curiosity but as a professional. "You saw it because you understood the culture, not just the language." Liam gave a small nod. Translation is about empathy. It's seeing how another world builds its truth. Her gaze lingered. "We need that in our company." A beat passed. "What would it take," she added, "for someone like you to stay involved?" He blinked. "What do you mean? I mean, stop being invisible." That night, Liam stood at the bus stop with Sophie, the city lights flickering like a second sky. She leaned against him, holding a cup of hot cocoa. "Did they listen?" she asked. "They did," he said softly. "Did they believe you?" He smiled. "Maybe for the first time in a long time." "I believed myself." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Then that means tomorrow's going to be different, right?" Liam looked out over the skyline. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Somewhere above them a door had opened, and the man who wasn't on the list had just stepped through it. 2 floors below the executive suite in a narrow glass-walled office, rarely used for anything but quiet firings or discreet HR meetings, Liam sat in front of a monitor for the first time in years. The screen glowed with company files, folders labeled Archive Internal Communication, Draft Contracts. A legal analyst named Dev Patel sat beside him, tapping nervously at a notepad. Madison stood by the door, arms crossed. She hadn't said much since bringing him in, but her eyes hadn't stopped watching. "You'll be reviewing translated communications from potential partners," Dev explained, adjusting his glasses. "Some of the language is vague. We want to be sure we're not walking into ambiguity again." Liam nodded slowly, letting his fingers hover over the keyboard. It wasn't just about language. It was about intention. The buried tone behind business politeness, the shadow behind a smile. He clicked open the first file. Korean again. Then Chinese. Then a peculiar blend of Japanese legalese and archaic Mandarin. He worked silently line by line, his eyes scanning faster than anyone expected. Dev leaned over once. "Sorry, did you study all three?" Liam didn't look away from the screen. Language is just memory wearing different clothes. Dev blinked, not quite understanding, but wrote it down anyway. Across the room, Madison watched the janitor-turned-linguist dive through thousands of pages with almost monk-like focus. No showmanship, no ego, just clarity. And something else too, something she couldn't quite name yet. Wounds, maybe. Wounds that didn't bleed anymore but still shaped the way he moved. She broke the silence. "Why'd you come back after Yale?" Liam didn't look at her. Just kept reading. "Because I thought being right would matter more than being safe." It didn't. And now. He paused, scrolling to a highlighted sentence. "I just want my daughter to grow up in a world where truth doesn't always come last." She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. That night, Liam and Sophie sat on the curb outside their apartment building. He was in his undershirt, a work shirt draped over his shoulder, sipping tea from a paper cup. Sophie dangled her legs off the concrete edge face lit by the glow of her tablet. "Dad. Do you like her?" He blinked. "Like who?" "The CEO lady." He chuckled. "That's not how the world works, kiddo." "Why not?" He took a breath, searching for a soft answer. "Because she lives in the sky and we live under the sidewalk." Sophie looked up at the stars. "Then maybe someone just needs to build a better staircase." He stared at her, stunned by the weight of such an innocent truth. The next morning, Liam arrived early to the glass office. Dev was already there, eyes wide. "You need to see this," he said. A file had been misfiled in the translation logs, buried deep. A vendor proposal written partially in French, partially in English, but the French sections revealed something the English completely omitted. An exclusivity clause with a side-channel arrangement. If signed, Winter Industries would be bound to purchase secondary materials at a 300% markup from a shell company registered offshore. Liam frowned. This wasn't in the executive summary. No. And worse, it's been approved by procurement already. He highlighted the sections, annotated them, added cross-references. Within 10 minutes, a red warning flag sat on the top corner of the internal document labeled Urgent Conflict Discovery. Madison stormed in 5 minutes later. "What is it now?" Liam stood. "A hidden pipeline clause? If you sign it, you'll be locked into a shell supplier at 3 times the cost. On paper, it looks clean, but in French it's, well, surgical." She stared at the screen, then turned to Dev. "Did anyone catch this?" Dev shook his head. "No one reads the French." "He does." Her voice was quiet but electric. Hours later, Madison stood at the head of a crisis meeting. Department heads, board members, and legal teams circled her like chess pieces. She told them what Liam had found twice. Not once did she say a janitor. Not once did she qualify his contribution. And when the CFO raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Well, that's lucky," she answered with a calm steel. "It's not luck, it's vision. Just not the kind you usually pay attention to." The room fell silent. "We almost signed 2 deals in 2 weeks that could have sunk this company. Both buried in language no one bothered to translate properly. That ends today." Back downstairs, Liam sat alone in the break room sipping from a chipped mug. Sophie had drawn little flowers on it with Sharpie Best Dad. Even if he's tired. Madison entered without knocking. She sat across from him. No blazer, no heels, just a black turtleneck and jeans. She looked less like a CEO, more like someone who hadn't slept. "They want to offer you a contract," she said. "Consultant, cultural and linguistic intelligence advisor." He stared. "Me, you've earned it. Twice in 48 hours. He shook his head slightly. I'm not polished like you people. That's exactly why I want you. You see what polish hides?" He looked down at the mug, then back at her. "Why are you really doing this?" Madison's eyes didn't flinch. "Because I used to believe the smartest people sat in the highest chairs. Then a janitor walked in and reminded me that wisdom doesn't ask for permission, it just shows up." She stood to leave. "Think about it. You don't have to decide now." As she walked away, Liam called after her. "Madison." She paused. "What if I fail?" She smiled. "Then you'll fail with purpose, and I'll still back you." That night, Sophie made them pancakes for dinner. Slightly burnt, too much syrup. Liam watched her, wondering how many fathers in the world felt this exact mix of fear and hope in their chest. He looked down at his hands that once wiped floors, now changing futures. And maybe, just maybe, his daughter was right. Maybe someone really was building a better staircase. The next morning, the elevator chimed on floor 47, a floor not listed on the public directory. It was the internal operations wing used mostly for interdepartmental war rooms, pilot projects, and Madison's most confidential initiatives. Liam stepped out, gripping a folder with both hands like it might disappear if he let go. His boots were polished, Sophie insisted, and his overalls had been replaced by clean slacks and a button-down. Still, he walked like a man trying not to make noise in a museum. Madison met him outside a glass-paneled room with no sign. No name, he asked. "Not yet," she replied. "Maybe you'll give it one." Inside were 4 people. Dev, a sharp-witted intern named Chloe, an old-school procurement analyst called Greg, and a quiet Vietnamese-American woman from Risk named Lynn. Liam recognized none of them. "You're all here because you saw what others didn't." Madison said, "Welcome to Project Halcyon." "What's Halcyon?" Dev asked. "It means peace after the storm," Liam said softly. Madison smiled faintly. "Exactly. We're going to audit every major deal signed in the last 10 years. Every translation, every cultural clause, every supplier we've never met face to face. From the ground up." Greg raised an eyebrow. "That's thousands of documents." "Then we'd better start." The days blurred. Liam found himself buried in dialects, footnotes, and diplomatic nuances, everything from subtle phrasing in Portuguese shipping contracts to obscure vendor clauses in Japanese IP agreements. It was exhausting, but it also felt alive. Each document was a conversation someone once thought would never be overheard. And now he was listening. One evening, as the sun melted down Madison's office windows, she called Liam in for coffee. Real coffee, not the sludge from B6. She poured him a cup and gestured to the seat across from her. "You're holding up." Liam nodded. "I think my brain's stretching in places it forgot existed." She chuckled. Then silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. Just heavy. She stared into her mug, then finally asked, "Why did you really leave academia?" Liam exhaled, leaning back. "Because I spoke up when I wasn't supposed to. A visiting professor plagiarized a thesis written in Korean. I reported it. The department smoothed it over, quietly removed the student, quietly pushed me out. You weren't protected." "No, but I wasn't bitter. Just tired. I took the first stable job I could find." She nodded. "Did you ever regret it?" He looked out at the skyline. "Only when I believed that silence was safer than truth." She looked at him then, not as a colleague or a janitor or even a consultant, but as a man. One with bruises where accolades should have been. That weekend, Sophie insisted on baking cookies, her version of celebrating her dad's promotion, though he'd never used the word himself. Flour dusted the countertops. Jazz played low on the kitchen radio. Liam stirred the dough while Sophie narrated her plan to open a cafe where kids could bring homework and rescue dogs could nap under every table. "You'd run the register," she said, "and I'd give free cookies to people who look sad." Liam smiled. "You'd go bankrupt in a week, kiddo. That's why you do the math part." She licked the spoon, then paused. "You're happier now?" He looked at her. "Yeah. Your eyes don't look tired in the morning anymore." It hit him harder than he expected, because she was right. On Monday, Madison brought the entire Halcyon team into the executive boardroom for the first time. It was symbolic, and it was strategic. There, among polished shoes and pressed suits, stood Liam in his thrift store button-up and scuffed boots carrying a USB stick that contained more truth than most annual reports. "We've found several breaches," Madison announced to the room of VPs and board members. "Not malicious, just overlooked, misunderstood, and costly." Liam took a breath and stepped forward. He clicked the remote. Slide 1A clause from a Brazilian supplier where the word garantia was mistranslated as assurance instead of its intended meaning, financial bond. It cost the company $4.2 million in collateral. Slide 2, a Thai logistics partner whose local subclause allowed indefinite warehouse hold triggered during COVID, but ignored because the English version was summarized. Slide 3. A Chinese clause using the idiom Jihua Xianfu, offering flowers in the Buddha's name, translated literally, not contextually. What it actually meant was the vendor planned to use Winter's infrastructure to service a competitor. When he finished, the room was dead silent. Then, Greg, the veteran procurement analyst, cleared his throat. "He just saved us 5 years of audit mistakes in 15 minutes. Liam looked up at Madison, unsure what came next. But she smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet the man who wasn't on the list." That night, as Liam and Sophie walked home beneath a soft drizzle, she skipped beside him, clutching his hand. "What's a halcyon?" she asked. "It's a kind of bird," he said. "Legend says it can calm the sea." She beamed. "Then I hope you grow wings, Dad." He looked at her, heart full. "I think I already am." Upstairs, back in the invisible office with no name, a sticky note appeared on the glass halcyon room where the quiet ones are finally heard. And this time, no one peeled it off. The rain had stopped, but Liam still shook out his jacket as he entered the building the next morning. Something about the way the air clung to the glass, the way the clouds hovered over the skyline, it felt like a warning dressed in fog. Upstairs, the halcyon room buzzed quietly. Greg and Lynn were reviewing vendor portfolios. Chloe was decoding a Vietnamese invoice chain. Dev typed headphones and mouthing translations under his breath. Liam was the last to arrive. And something was off. The usual lightness, the quiet pride they'd shared these past few days wasn't there. It had been replaced by tension like an unspoken email hovering above everyone's head. Liam set down his bag. "What happened?" Chloe turned. "There's a leak." Lynn nodded solemnly. An executive board member leaked halcyon findings to an outside investor. They're trying to discredit the whole project, make it look like we're fabricating false red flags to delay deals. Liam's jaw tightened. That doesn't make sense. Why would anyone Greg cut in? Because we're stepping on toes. The bigger the rot, the deeper it hides. The silence grew heavier. And Madison Liam asked. Dev glanced toward the hallway. "She's being dragged into an emergency board meeting." Now, on floor 51, the boardroom was ice and glass. 12 directors sat in a semicircle, their faces stony, their eyes guarded. Madison stood at the center, not as a CEO, but as a defendant. "Project Halcyon was unauthorized," said one director coldly. "Internal audits are the responsibility of compliance, not ad hoc special teams assembled from janitorial staff and interns." Madison didn't blink. And yet that janitor and that intern uncovered contractual oversights totaling over $14 million in exposure. Would you prefer we wait until an expose prints it on the front page of the Times? Another board member leaned forward. What we prefer is protocol, hierarchy. You went around your own departments. She nodded slowly. Yes, because the departments that should have seen the truth were blind to it, or worse, chose not to see it. Murmurs. So, what's your solution? She didn't hesitate. Let the results speak louder than the resumes. Downstairs, Liam sat at his old bench in the service hallway, hands buried in his jacket pockets. The old vending machine blinked beside him, the same one he used to swipe for cheap coffee after mopping night shifts. He stared at it now like it belonged to another life. Then he heard footsteps. Madison appeared, her heels clicking with controlled precision. She looked more composed than she should have, but her eyes, they were tired, bruised by politics but burning with purpose. "They want me to shut it down," she said without preamble. "Halcyon. You. Everything." Liam stood but said nothing. "They say you're not qualified, that you pose a legal liability if your analysis leads to a diplomatic issue. Then let them take it." She raised an eyebrow. "You'd give it up that easily." He shook his head. "I've already lost more than most people realize. I don't care about a title. I care about truth. But if protecting it means hurting you—" He paused, jaw tight. "Then maybe I still belong in the basement." Madison stepped closer. "Don't you dare say that again." Her voice was low but electric. "You didn't crawl your way up just to disappear when the room got cold. You're not here because of charity. You're here because you saw what no one else did. That kind of mind doesn't belong in the dark." Liam looked at her then, and for a moment neither of them were thinking about documents or departments or protocol. They were two people each carrying different wounds but finally standing where someone saw them. That evening, Liam picked Sophie up from her after-school reading club. She ran into his arms, chattering about how she'd read aloud from Charlotte's Web and didn't even stutter once. As they walked home, Sophie looked up. "You look worried." "Just tired," he replied. "Worried, tired, or cookie-tired?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe both." She tugged at his sleeve. "You always tell me that just because people don't clap doesn't mean you're not doing something amazing." He looked down, surprised. "Did I say that?" "Yeah. So maybe your work is quiet right now. But it's the kind of quiet that matters later." His throat tightened. "You're scary smart, sometimes you know that." "It's genetic," she said proudly. "From my dad, who's changing the world one word at a time." The next day, Madison entered the halcyon room and closed the door behind her. Her team looked up, waiting. "We're not shutting down," she said. Relief spread across their faces. "But we're not going loud, either. We're going quietly deeper. Every new clause, every quiet inconsistency, we log it. But we do it smart. We do it like shadows. And when the time comes, we'll show them everything at once." She turned to Liam. "If you still want in." He stood slow but steady. "I never left." That night, while Liam worked late annotating a trade deal from Vietnam, Madison sent him a message. "The room they wouldn't let you enter. We're building it, from scratch, one truth at a time." He stared at the screen for a long time, then typed one line, "Make sure there's a chair with no nameplate. That's mine." Because some men never needed a title to belong. They just needed a room that listened. At 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday that felt like it was holding its breath, the halcyon room went still. Greg had paused mid-scroll. Lynn was staring at a map of supplier sites. Chloe held her phone mid-air, not recording, not typing, just frozen. Liam had just uncovered something. A contract in Turkish, seemingly benign. Until one idiom, küçük parmakla yazılı, jumped out at him. Literally written with the little finger. But in Turkish business slang, it meant deliberately hidden clause. He leaned forward, rereading the section. His chest tightened. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. And worse, it had been signed 3 years ago. Winter Industries had been hemorrhaging funds into a materials inflation adjustment that was calculated on a black market index from an unregulated exchange in Eastern Europe. Almost no one had caught it. No one had translated the Turkish side documents. No one. Until now. Madison stood alone at the corner window of her office, a storm inching closer across the skyline. She didn't flinch when the knock came. "Come in." Liam entered, slowly, file in hand. No flourish, no preamble. He placed the paper on her desk. "We've been bled dry for 3 years. Quietly, by a smile and a handshake we never understood." Madison didn't respond at first. She read the clause, then again, then looked up at him. "How bad?" "Over 17 million. Silence. "Can we reverse it?" Liam shook his head. "Legally, it's water under the bridge. But ethically, if this goes public, it'll bury someone she finished." He nodded. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Liam hesitated, then answered quietly but firmly. "I want us to not be the kind of company that lets this slide just because the damage is already done." She closed the file slowly as if sealing something dangerous. "Then we go to war. The quiet kind." In the following days, Halcyon operated like a covert task force. Each team member worked after hours cross-referencing every deal connected to that Turkish vendor. They found trails, connections to 2 former board members, a luxury apartment in Zurich bought under a shell company, a campaign donation buried in a passee. Every breadcrumb whispered the same thing someone upstairs knew, and someone thought no one downstairs would ever read between the lines. Friday evening, Liam returned home to find Sophie on the couch with a blanket draped over her like a superhero cape, watching a nature documentary about whales. She looked up, concerned. "You didn't call. I thought something happened." He ruffled her hair. "Something is happening. But it's okay. We're still on the side that's trying to do the right thing." She paused, then asked in a voice small and serious, "Are you scared?" He sank into the couch beside her. "Yes. But fear's just the price of doing something that matters." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a tiny folded note. Crayon on scrap paper, it read, "You don't need to be the biggest voice, just the one that doesn't lie." He blinked. "Where'd you get that I wrote it?" "For you, in case you forgot." He didn't say a word, just wrapped his arms around her, holding her like the truth itself. Monday came like thunder on marble. The boardroom was full, not just directors but shareholders, legal counsel, PR reps. Something big was brewing. Madison stood at the front with a calm intensity, Liam beside her. No janitor's cart, no mop, just him and the truth. She began. "We've identified a breach of ethics, not just by external partners but by those within our ranks. Today we'll show you what happens when you trust the unheard voices. Slide after slide. Clause after clause. Not speculation, not conspiracy, just the truth. Unpolished, undeniable." When the presentation ended, the silence wasn't stunned, it was shamed. Then one shareholder stood. Elderly, sharp-eyed, respected. "Who found this?" Madison nodded toward Liam. He did. The man adjusted his glasses. "And who is he?" Before she could answer, Liam stepped forward. "My name's Liam Carter. I clean floors. I raise a daughter. And I rid contracts because the people paid to do it didn't." Gasps. Shuffling. But no one laughed, because no one could. He continued. "I didn't come here to shame anyone, but I believe in second chances. Not just for people, but for companies. This isn't about punishment. It's about choosing what kind of legacy we want to leave behind." The room shifted, and one by one heads began to nod. That night, Madison poured 2 glasses of wine in her office. She handed one to Liam. To the man who wasn't on the list, she said. He raised his glass, then hesitated. "Do you ever get tired of carrying all this?" She smiled. "Only when I forget I don't have to carry it alone anymore." Meanwhile, in a small Brooklyn apartment, a little girl taped a new note to the fridge. It read, "My dad saved a company, but he's still my favorite because he never forgets to say goodnight." Sometimes the world changes because of a headline. Sometimes because of a headline no one ever sees. And sometimes it changes because one quiet man read between the lines. It happened on a Wednesday. No warning. Just a cold email with the subject line "Reorganization Plan. Immediate implementation." By noon, the Halcyon Room's access cards were revoked. The project was suspended under internal restructuring. Legal had stepped in. The server was locked down. Chloe's badge flashed red at the scanner. Lynn's files disappeared mid-backup. Greg stared blankly at the frozen interface like it had betrayed him. And Liam wasn't even told. He found out when his name vanished from the internal directory. Madison burst into the operations wing like a storm in heels, her phone pressed to her ear. "You don't get to erase truth just because it's inconvenient," she snapped. "If this is retaliation, we'll take it public. Yes, I am prepared to lose the board vote, but I'm not prepared to lose my integrity." Liam met her at the edge of the glass corridor. "What's happening?" She didn't answer immediately, just looked at him with something between fury and heartbreak. "They're shutting us down, Liam. The whole team. Everything. They're saying we exceeded our scope. That Halcyon became a liability. But we had a proof. Proof only matters if someone wants to see it." That evening, Liam didn't go home. He went to the roof. It was where he used to eat lunch in secret during his early days. Where no one looked. Where the city was just noise and light and wind. Madison found him there somehow. She handed him a cup of lukewarm coffee. Sat beside him on the concrete ledge. For a while, they said nothing. Then she broke the silence. "I thought we were doing something righteous." "We were," he said. "We still are. But righteousness doesn't come with a guarantee." She looked at him. "I could walk. Go public. Burn the house down on the way out." And then what he turned to her. "We become headlines for a week. Symbols. And then forgotten. Or worse, spun into something we never were. So what, we just walk away?" He shook his head. "No. We wait. We find the crack they missed. The one they always miss. And when the light gets in, we shine through." She stared at him, quietly moved. "You know, before all this, I thought resilience was just about staying busy." "It's not," Liam said. "It's about remembering who you are when no one's looking." That night, Liam came home to find Sophie asleep on the couch, her arms wrapped around a half-finished science project. The kind with glitter and glue and one light bulb that blinked when it wanted. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, then sat beside her. "You know how we talked about storms," he whispered. She stirred. "Like thunder." "Yeah. You said they don't last forever." Eyes barely open, she mumbled. "Still true." He brushed her hair from her forehead. "Then I'll wait for the sky to clear. Promise." The next morning, Madison sent one final internal memo. Just 3 sentences: Halcyon is on indefinite hold. The team will be reassigned. No further comment will be provided at this time. No one replied. No one needed to. The silence said everything. 3 days passed. Then, on a quiet Saturday, Liam received a manila envelope slid under his apartment door. No return address, just his name in block letters. Inside a USB stick, a single printed page of encrypted logins and a note. They didn't clean up as well as they thought. The servers weren't scrubbed. Not all of them. What you built, it still lives in the shadows. There was no signature. But Liam recognized the handwriting. It was Dev's. He plugged the stick into an offline laptop. Lines of code, internal messages, time-stamped entries, vendor files they'd never even reached. It was all there. Everything. They had buried the truth, but not deep enough. On Monday, Liam stood again in front of Madison's office. This time not with coffee or questions, but with hope. She looked up from her desk, surprised. He dropped the USB on the table. They turned off the lights, he said. But they forgot we still know where the switch is. They called the team back not to a boardroom but to Madison's apartment. A space with no cameras, no logins. Just people and purpose. Greg brought printouts. Lynn came with her husband's personal laptop. Chloe wore a hoodie that said, "Truth wins in the end." They lit up Dev's files like fireflies in a jar. What they found wasn't just corruption. It was evidence. A trail of backdoor transactions, names that didn't match ledgers, approvals that never passed ethics checks. They had enough to take it to legal, or to the press, but Liam, quiet and steady as always, said, "Not yet. Let them think we're gone. Let them lower their guard. Then we move not to destroy, but to restore." That night, Madison stood by the window as rain began again, soft cleansing. "Do you think we're crazy for trying again?" Liam, now beside her, shook his head. "Crazy is letting the world keep spinning broken just because it's easier." She smiled barely. "We lost the room. Then we built a better one." He paused. "This time we won't need nameplates." Far below, the lights of the city flickered as if nodding in agreement. And somewhere in the dark, justice stirred in its sleep, ready to wake. The day it all changed again didn't begin with thunder. It began with a power flicker. Just a moment, barely half a second, but enough to stop every elevator in the building. Enough to turn one ordinary morning into a chapter no one saw coming. Liam had just stepped into elevator B holding 2 coffees, one for himself, the other for Madison. She had a 9 a.m. call with an outside ethics firm they were quietly consulting, and he knew she hadn't slept much. But at floor 22, the lights blinked. Then everything stopped. The elevator stuttered, jerked, froze. He pressed the emergency button. Nothing. He exhaled and sipped his coffee. The heat calmed him. Then came the voice. "You again?" He turned. The woman in the corner, mid-50s, tailored suit, pearls too perfect, was familiar. Too familiar. Board member, Evelyn Drake. The one who had called him a risk with a mop. The one who voted to suspend Halcyon. "Miss Drake," he said calmly. "Nice morning for unexpected conversations." She gave a dry smile. "I suppose we're trapped." "Seems like it." They stood in silence. Then she spoke again, but this time her voice was not sharp. It was low, wary. "You were never supposed to be here, you know." Liam didn't flinch. "And yet, here I am, elevator and all." She laughed once, not kindly. "You made everyone nervous. Not because of what you found, because you weren't predictable. We know how to manage egos. We don't know how to manage integrity." Liam studied her face. For once, it wasn't armor. It was regret. "So why did you vote to kill the project?" Her eyes met his. "Because I was scared, not of you, of what the company would look like if people like you started winning." He tilted his head. "People like me." She nodded slowly. "Men who aren't bought, who don't need applause, who don't trade truth for titles." He didn't speak, because in that moment he realized something. This wasn't an enemy. This was a mirror. A version of someone who once believed in change but traded it for comfort. 20 minutes passed before the elevator rebooted. As the doors opened on floor 34, Evelyn stepped out, then turned back. "You're not wrong, Mr. Carter. You just showed up too soon. Next time don't knock. Just walk in." She was gone before he could answer. Madison's office was dim-lit only by the soft glow of her screen. She looked up as Liam entered, handing her coffee. Rough ride, enlightening. He sat across from her, then pulled out a thumb drive. "This is it. Everything Dev left us layered with Lynn's audit trails, Chloe's metadata, and Greg's time-stamped memos. All verified, all clean." Madison stared at it like it was radioactive. "You realize what this means?" "Yes. It means we're not asking permission anymore." She leaned back in her chair. "I always thought I'd feel triumphant when this day came. Instead, I feel terrified. Because you know the cost. Because I know I'll pay it. That night they met the rest of the team in a cafe off Lexington's small, warm, no cameras. Chloe spread out documents. Lynn brought summaries. Dev joined via VPN, his voice crackling through a secure line. Greg had one question. So, we leak it. Madison hesitated. Liam spoke first. Not just leak. We control the story. We don't drop a scandal. We reveal a roadmap. This isn't about blame, it's about building better. Chloe nodded. We show what was broken then. How to fix it. Lynn added, and who was brave enough to speak when no one else did. Greg smiled. You mean us? Madison looked at every face. Yes, us. The janitor. The intern. The mother of two who moonlights as an analyst. The guy who codes in 3 languages but never wanted the spotlight. We're not the right people. We're the necessary ones. Later that evening, Liam sat with Sophie on the fire escape sharing a bowl of popcorn. She looked up, mouth full. Why are you smiling weird? Because I'm proud, and scared, and tired, all at once. She leaned on his shoulder. You're doing something important, aren't you? He didn't answer. She nudged him. You always tell me even small voices can make big changes. Yeah, he said softly. But some days I wish I could just be your dad and not carry the rest. She reached into her pocket and handed him a folded paper. Crayon. Again. This time it read, Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear janitor shoes and carry USB drives. He held it like it was gold. Because to him, it was. The next morning, Madison sent one message. To the press. To the regulatory bodies. To every board member. A digital package, labeled Project Halcyon, truth file attached a letter, short, sharp, final. If integrity costs us everything, we pay it gladly. But this time, you don't get to erase us quietly. And with that, she clicked send. The war was no longer quiet, but it was still righteous. And for the first time in years, they were not alone. It started with a ping, then another, and another. One by one, inboxes across the corporate world lit up with a file that didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. Subject line. The room you locked, we found the key. Attached, the Halcyon report. It was clean surgical, no dramatics, just facts. Names, dates, inconsistencies. Internal approvals signed without oversight. A vendor chain that looped into private accounts in Zurich and Cyprus. Evidence of exploitation disguised as efficiency. But the twist. The report ended not with outrage but with solutions. Policy reforms, transparency protocols, anonymous audit tools any company could adopt. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a blueprint for redemption. By mid-morning, Gain Halcyon truth trended worldwide. News anchors debated it. Ethics watchdogs cited it. Ivy League professors assigned it. But more importantly, employees everywhere shared it. Cashiers, nurses, custodians, paralegals. People who'd once felt invisible saw themselves in that janitor with a daughter and a quiet, stubborn heart. Inside, Winter Industries' panic met protocol. Emergency meetings. Lawyers in suits too sharp. PR teams scrambling. And at the center of the storm, Madison Thorne. She didn't hide. She walked into the boardroom as if she had every right to be there, because now she did. The board was already seated, restless. Evelyn Drake stood as Madison entered. Her voice cut through the buzz like cold steel. Is it true you authorized this leak? Madison didn't flinch. No, I authored a truth. Whether it leaked or erupted is semantics. Someone scoffed. Another leaned in. You've exposed the company to litigation, Ms. Thorne. You've embarrassed us publicly. She nodded once. Yes, because we were complicit privately. Then she dropped the final blow. And I won't apologize for lighting a match in a room full of gas leaks. Silence. Until Evelyn spoke again, softer now. And him. The janitor. His name is Liam Carter. And he didn't break the rules, he reminded us why they were written. That afternoon, they called Liam in not to fire him, not to scold him, but to listen. To really listen. He stood before 12 men and women, some of whom wouldn't meet his eyes. He wasn't nervous. He was resolved. This company was never just about revenue, he began. It was about legacy. What we leave behind when the lights are off. And for a while, we forgot that. Someone cleared their throat. And what would you have us do now? He looked at each of them, pausing. Start over. But this time, start with people. With honesty. With policies that protect whistleblowers instead of burying them. He handed over a printed copy of Halcyon's suggested reforms. You don't need to agree with me, but you do need to understand that silence isn't safety. It's slow collapse. One of the youngest board members leaned forward. And if we made you more than a janitor, Liam gave a tired smile. You'd be late to the party. I've always been more than a janitor. You just didn't look hard enough. Outside the glass walls of the executive floor, dozens of employees stood watching the monitors, listening through hallway whispers. When Liam stepped out, they clapped not like fans, but like family. A programmer offered him a handshake. A receptionist hugged him. A cafeteria worker simply said, "You reminded us we matter." That evening, Madison and Liam stood together on the rooftop once more, city lights stretching beneath them like promises. "It's not over, is it?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not even close. But now we fight from the inside. You think they'll change. They already have. They listened today. That's the first step." She paused, then looked at him. "You know, when I first saw you in that hallway mop in hand, I thought there's a man the world overlooks. And now I think the world should be terrified of what happens when men like you stop being overlooked." He chuckled. "I don't want to be terrifying." "Good," she said, "because that's what makes you powerful." Back home, Sophie was waiting with hot chocolate and a blanket. She pulled him to the couch, flicking on the old movie they always watched when things were hard. But tonight, they didn't get past the opening credits. Because she asked Dad, "Do you think telling the truth always wins?" He thought for a long moment. "No, not always. But it always matters. And that's enough." She nodded, then whispered, "You're my truth." He hugged her tight, kissed her hair, and whispered back, "And you're my reason." Some revolutions are loud. Others, they ride up a service elevator at 6 a.m., holding a mop, a smile, and a memory of what's right. The boardroom would never be the same, and neither would the man who cleaned it. A year later, the building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. The lobby was no longer marble and silence. Now it echoed with quiet greetings, the occasional laugh, and the smell of real coffee, not just corporate fuel. A digital wall, once used for ads, now displayed employee art community events and birthdays because people mattered again. And tucked into the corner of the main floor, just past the elevators, was a new office. Its door always open. A gold plaque read, "Liam Carter, Ethics and Culture Liaison." Below that, in smaller letters because integrity starts in the quiet corners. Liam sat at his desk reviewing an onboarding report from a recent intern when he heard a knock. Not on the doorframe, on the glass. He looked up to see Madison standing outside, 2 coffees in hand. She didn't wait for an invitation, just walked in like she always had. Still working through lunch, she teased, handing him a cup. Old habits die hard. Good habits don't have to die at all. She sat across from him, glancing at the shelves behind his desk. On them were framed drawings, most of them done in crayon. Sophie's touch. One of them showed a stick figure dad holding a mop in one hand and a briefcase in the other. "She still thinks you're a superhero." "Huh." Liam smiled. "No. She knows I'm human now. And somehow that made me more of one." The company had survived the storm, but it hadn't gone back to normal. Because normal wasn't good enough. Instead, they rebuilt from the inside out. New policies, anonymous hotlines that actually worked, equity reviews, listening sessions, quarterly town halls led by real employees, not just PR. Liam didn't run the company. He didn't want to, but his fingerprints were everywhere in the way decisions were made in the pauses before executives spoke in the questions interns now felt brave enough to ask. And Madison. She didn't just keep her title. She redefined it. Her leadership became less about control, more about conviction. She mentored instead of managing, led with presence instead of pressure. The board didn't just forgive her. They began to follow her. One afternoon, months after the dust had settled, Liam was invited to speak at a university panel about workplace ethics. He almost said no, but Sophie insisted. She even picked out his shirt. "I want them to see what real heroes wear," she said. "No cape, just kindness and clean shoes." When Liam took the stage, he wasn't nervous. He was whole. He told them the truth, no embellishments. Just what happened when one man, armed only with honesty and fluency in 3 languages, chose not to stay silent. At the end, a student raised their hand. "If you could go back and change one thing, would you?" Liam paused, then shook his head. "No, because every broken thing I saw taught me how to build better. And every door that closed made me knock harder the next time." That night at home, he made spaghetti Sophie's favorite. She set the table. 3 plates. "Are we expecting someone?" he asked. "No," she grinned, "but I like the idea of someone new joining us, just in case." They sat by the window. Rain tapped gently against the glass. She twirled noodles around her fork like it was a ceremony. "Do you miss it?" she asked between bites. "Miss what, being invisible?" He laughed softly. "Sometimes, but not really. I think I needed to be invisible first, to understand how to really see others." She thought about that. Then said, "I hope people like you never disappear again." "We won't." He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Because people like you are growing up, and you're watching." The next morning, he walked through the company doors just as the sun broke through the skyline. Light spilled across the floor, painting gold over marble. A woman near the front desk called out, "Morning, Mr. Carter." He paused, turned back. "Liam," he said. "Just Liam." Then he glanced up at the old security camera in the corner, now repositioned to watch the entrance instead of the employees. He gave it a small wave, because even the building had learned to look at the world differently. In a quiet hallway outside the main conference room, a little brass sign hung beneath the company mission statement. It wasn't part of any formal campaign. No one claimed credit for it. It simply read, "Sometimes the janitor holds the map." And just below that, "Let them speak." Stories end. But truths don't. They ripple. And if we're lucky, if we're brave, they echo through generations in boardrooms, in classrooms, in kitchens where fathers teach daughters how to speak softly and stand tall. Liam never set out to change the world. He just refused to leave it unchanged, and somehow that made all the difference. And that was the story of a man who was never just a janitor, a father, a fighter, a quiet voice who chose to speak up and changed everything. Now, we want to hear from you. Which moment in Liam's journey moved you the most? Have you ever felt invisible until someone saw your worth? And most importantly, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your thoughts and your country in the comments below. We read everyone. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about love, resilience, and the human spirit. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep believing in the goodness that changes the world. See you in the next story.